Good afternoon. I won't keep you long. This should only take an hour or so. I just wanted to make some quick comments. Adobe, we're really proud to be part of this conference. I'm actually fairly new to Adobe. I've been there 2 years, and I've really seen the company really start to make a new commitment to diversity and inclusion. In fact, today we released a really interesting report, like solid, concrete research into the nature of the diversity and inclusion state of the industry, so to speak, and it's been a learning experience for us all. I also just want to offer a personal note. Like, I've been a designer for a good long time now, two decades, and when I started out, this kind of thing just didn't happen. You know, the central narrative was like diversity, inclusion, race. These were problems that were just nearly almost solved, and they would go away. We just stopped talking about them. And I just think it's amazing that we can have a conference like this and we can have this kind of dialogue. And I think it's also really worth thinking about if you get news alerts on your phone, regardless of what end of the political spectrum you're on. I think the world is not in a great space, but yet we're still able to come together and do stuff like this. I think it's pretty great. I think everybody should give yourselves like a round of applause for doing this. It's pretty great. Okay, so now I just want to introduce our last session for the Creative Director track. And please put your hands together again and welcome Judy, John, and David Droga. Thanks a lot.
Hello.
Hi. So I said to David I was going to bring notes because somebody needed to keep us on track, and I'm a notes person. So hi, thrilled to be here today with David. That's awesome.
Very happy to do it with you. You're the responsible one.
So, you know, we kick off by introducing ourselves. I'm Judy John. I'm the CEO of Burnett Canada, and I'm the Chief Creative for North America. And just how I got into the business was I studied advertising, and my first job, my roommate was a waitress at the Four Seasons Hotel. And she said, these two ad guys come every day. And I said, get me an interview. I've got to get into the business. So I got my first meeting that way with two creative guys, and I ended up writing research papers for canola oil. And I did that all summer, and then when they moved agencies and it was time for my internship, I went into Chiat Day in Toronto, and I didn't have a book, which was really stupid, but I did my first internship there. I think they took pity on me.
What did your family think of you going into advertising?
Well, my mother didn't know what advertising really was because they own a Chinese restaurant, and she's like, she's just thrilled that I have a job.
That's funny. My name is David Droga. I am the creative chairman of Droga 5. That's a made-up title, by the way, creative chairman. It doesn't really mean anything.
It's fancy.
Yeah, exactly. It was chairman sounded too boring, so creative chairman sounded more interesting. Even though now there are lots of creative chairmen. I'm like, That was actually a joke title. You don't have to take it on. From my accent, you can tell I'm from Australia. My first job was in the mailroom of grey advertising. I was 18. I didn't go to college, although my 4 elder brothers did. They all got scholarships to Cambridge. So when I said I wasn't going to go into college, that freaked my family out. When I said I wanted to go into advertising, that freaked them out more. And then when I said I've got a job in the mailroom, it was like that was the end of the conversation. But it was the best way to get exposed to it because essentially, I would spend 2 hours a day sorting mail, and the other 6-8 hours snooping. So I had an excuse to look on everybody's desk.
Oh, right.
And I used to just slowly, in slow motion, put mail on the creatives' desks so I could look at stuff. And the arrogant side to me was like, I think I can do better than that. And the insecure side of me was like, wow, I wish I could do that. And it was just a great exposure to the industry. And then I did an advertising school in Australia called Australian Writers and Art Directors. And thankfully I was the top student, so I got a job as a copywriter.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, it was amazing. My parents didn't take it seriously until about 3 years later, but it was...
Yeah, but you're right about, it's a great way to get into the business is just walking around and talking to people when you're an intern. I think a lot of our interns stay in their office. When I was an intern, the first thing that I got to do was in the traffic department. And what that was, you had copy, and it was written on a copy page, and you had to get it signed by the creatives. And so I got to read all their copy, and like you, I would think, I think I could do better than that.
Did you correct it?
Or not, no. But it's a great way to learn. It is a great way to learn. So we thought we'd warm up with a little speed round, just so that you can get to know us a little better. Serif or sans serif?
Well, it's funny. I should say sans serif, but I'm going to say serif only because I was looking at New York Times work this morning.
Yeah, I know.
So, I'm leaning that side of things at the moment. But it's wherever it's appropriate. I'm greedy.
Yeah.
What about you?
I'm sans serif for everything. And our head designer said to me, "How can you be so rigid?" I said, "It just looks better. I like sans serif. It's modern." But I get the New York Times reference.
No, exactly. I feel like, you've got to go what's appropriate.
Yes.
I even feel bad even picking a side on anything, because that's the beauty of being creative. You can change your mind at any time, and we can bullshit and justify why we changed our mind.
That's true. That's true. All right. Art or copy?
Even though I started as a copywriter and I love to write, I'm much more drawn to the art side of things. I just feel like immediately you get it. You have to read a beautiful piece of copy to know it's beautiful, but there's something visceral and straight away from the visual side of things.
Yeah.
So maybe it's because as a copywriter, I always wanted to be more an artist or an artist, that I sort of have a appreciation between the both.
I think all copywriters are frustrated art directors, because I picked art as well. I wanted to be an art director, but I'm actually not very good. I'm a better peanut gallery. I know when it looks right, but I really appreciate art and the power it has to stop people. And even when you judge award shows and you walk into the room, you just instantly gravitate to something that's really amazing looking.
It's true. It's true. That's why the cover of a magazine or in an art gallery or anything like that, or just it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
You can't explain why things draw you to them, but it's magic when it happens.
Yeah, it's true. All right. I threw this one in, last meal. And I asked David this in the green room, and he thought I meant the last meal he ate before he came here. And I said, no, that's not the point. It is, I want to know your dying meal. What is that last meal? Because it's something that's interesting to me.
Yeah, when she asked me, I was like, I had a kale salad. She's like, that would be your last meal?
It's like kale?
I was like, I thought that was a weird question. But, well, I go back to the fact that I hate choosing sometimes. So I would have a platter of things that shouldn't go together, but again, I can justify them going together. I would have a spicy chicken curry, spaghetti bolognese, and a roast chicken, stuffing, potato, peas, corn.
That's a lot of food.
All mushed together.
A lot of food. Mine is, for anyone who knows me, it's fried chicken. It's always fried chicken. A steamed fish with rice and coconut cream pie. I had dessert in mine, so.
Dessert, I don't have room for dessert.
You don't have room. You got 3 meals.
Dessert's a waste for me.
Okay, let's get into the evolution of you. One of the things we talked about was that moment in your career, at the beginning of your career, where you do something and you start feeling like, I can do this. Like, I could have a really good career doing this. And I was curious to know when was that for you?
I think it wasn't an epiphany I had. I mean, I was always fascinated. We were talking earlier backstage, I was sort of the guy at school who was Mr. Daydreamer. And when someone recommended that, there was this career called advertising where you could get paid to daydream and create things. And I was never essentially a hard worker at school. And I think right from the get-go, when I became a copywriter, I realized I actually liked working hard, that was the sort of turning point for me, that I was like, I'm actually enjoying what I'm doing enough where I like staying really late at night doing this. And I didn't feel bad sacrificing social life of youth.
Yeah.
No, not that I didn't have a social life. And going back to that award school thing, when I first did that, there was one tutor, this was one time that was sort of made me think, maybe I am good at it, was the first stuff that I showed him, he was like, did you really create that? Or did someone else do that for you? And I was like, oh, I must be pretty good if he doesn't think I did it. So that was, but it was that time, right? I've been very lucky. A lot of my successes it started early.
Yeah.
And I've just tried to keep my foot on the pedal from then. But
Yeah.
we all need those validations along the way.
I think so too. I'm glad to hear that you were a slacker too, because I was a big slacker in high school, and I had a 65 average, and that wasn't good. And I wasn't. It's not good for most of us. But I never really applied myself, and it was always on my report card. Does not apply herself. And it wasn't until I got into advertising that I wanted to work late. I wanted to be at the office till midnight. And, it was when I got my first ad into the One Show, I thought, oh, I could do this. I might be okay at this.
It's a funny one. And again, it depends on the opportunities you get from the get-go, because sometimes, you're deliberately, they leak opportunities to you very slowly and all that sort of stuff, and who you surround yourself with. I think in the environment that I found myself in very early, because I was the first hire of an agency that was a very hot agency. It became a very hot agency. I didn't sort of have to earn the right to have big opportunities from the get-go. I was just given them. So it was sink or swim. The first brief I got, which again now in hindsight is ridiculous, was the budget, and back in the day, it was $1 million for a TV commercial.
What?
And the brief, it was for a radio station, and the brief was from the client was, I'll do their extreme Aussie accent, mate, just do something that makes people go, fucking hell. Literally, that was the brief to me, and I was like, wow, advertising is incredible.
Yeah. Yeah,
And it was never been the same as that. I've never had a brief
yeah.
as easy as that, and obviously that wasn't very strategic. But
Was it incredible? Like your first,
at the time,
what you did with that $1 million?
I think it was. I mean, now if I looked at it,
We should look it up.
Stop. Don't look it up. No, look it up. But it's that sort of thing, and I just feel like I always look at every opportunity as a gift, and I'm thinking whether it be $1 million budget or the smallest thing ever, I'm like, the fact that I'm paid to think about something, look on a pad or now on a laptop or whatever it is, or now through conversation or through conversations with others, like we are so lucky.
Yeah.
And I speak of my brothers who, great people, I love them very much. They're very successful, they run hedge funds and all that sort of stuff. And I sit in their offices and I say that to them, I'm like, if I did this, I would shoot myself. It's so boring.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I think that too, most days when I'm not having a shitty day or self-doubt, those days where you go, this is the best job. Like I have the best job right now.
Yeah, because even in those hardest days, and I know we are the hardest simple industry in the world, because the principles of what we do are mind-numbingly simple.
Yeah.
Make a connection, sell, educate, inspire. It's just keeping to those, staying on track. But even on the worst possible days we have, you can go from a bad meeting and walk into another room and have another great meeting about something different. And we have that range, we have that opportunity. It's just, and that's never been lost on me. Even, the opportunities I have now, I still have the same attitude as when I was that 18-year-old copywriter thinking, that's amazing. I'm not going to blow this by, and I can't, as talented as I think I am or thought I was, that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
So the only thing I could be sure of was that I could work harder than someone else.
Yeah.
You can't believe you're more talented than
The work ethic is really important. And it's something I always say to my daughter about just work harder than everyone else. Like, it's really important. You can be talented as well, that will help, but the work ethic has to be there.
And people want you to succeed if they see that you work hard. I'm not saying you have to give it everything you've got and don't have a life, but I don't know, your career moves at the pace, not of your ambition, because everybody's ambitious.
Yeah.
Your career moves at the speed of your talent and your work ethic.
Yeah.
And your humanity. When you're a good person and you're generous with those people around you and you listen, and People want you to succeed.
Yeah, it's funny because people don't talk about being a good person very often in talks, in leadership, that's really not stated. And it's so important to team building and just relating with other humans and having them root for you. Having people in your agency root for you or your clients root for you. And that's being a good person. I think that no one ever talks about that.
Yeah, if my success is dependent on you not succeeding, then people are not going to want to champion you. And everybody at any stage, however successful they are, has to thank people around them that supported that or had eyes on them or taught them not to do things, because you come across people as you move up the food chain.
Yeah.
Which is like, well, I hope I'm not like that when I'm given opportunity or I'm a boss.
Yeah.
And I had plenty of those, and I also had plenty of inspiring role models along the way as well.
Yeah.
But
it's true. One of the things we also talked about was what constitutes a really great career. And, and I think that everybody sees careers as a very linear thing or a straight line. And we were just talking backstage about how there are failures and leadership looks different. But even when I was younger, I saw leadership as one way to get there. And I think that people struggle with what is success, and is it the next title? Is it the next, what does that look like?
Well, we certainly are an industry that puts a lot of onus on the size of your title or the size of your office or the size of your team. And I'm not going to pretend that people don't want to have more authority or earn greater salaries and all that sort of stuff. But if you just make decisions based on a title, not on the impact or the output or the place you do it, that's why people always end up sort of backed in a corner, not literally in a corner, but like maybe backed in a corner office with no options. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that happens.
Because they have big titles and big salaries, and they're the first to be cut, and they've got nothing to back it up. And we're also fortunate with one of these. We are an industry where it's an industry you can get fired for in many times for the right reasons, and still have a great career.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not this. You have to go from here to here, and a lot of people bounce from agency to agency because they are chasing that next evolution of them.
Yeah.
And the validation for them is not what they're putting out in the world. The validation for them is what's on their business card. And I'm like, knock yourself out.
Yeah.
It's not really the way I've thought about it. I've never, I've been fortunate again that things have worked for me, but I've never chased a title.
Yeah.
I've never chased a salary. I've never chased because going back to when I made a decision very early on, I still remember this conversation with my father, when I was coming out of the mailroom and I won that course, I was offered a job at FCB as a copywriter. And I think the salary was $30,000 a year, which was more money than I could even conceive. And I took that job, and then 2 months into the job, I got offered the job as the first employee of this new startup. And the people who were starting it were these feisty, I knew they had done great work in the past, and they were like 25 or 26. And they offered me to be their first employee, and they said, but our offer to you is $20,000. And there was no security. They didn't actually have a client yet. And I remember saying to my dad, I'm going to quit the job that I just took for a 33% pay cut. He's like, what clients do they have? And I said, they don't have any yet. And he said, what's their office like? I said, well, they're borrowing an office from a production company. In fact, my first desk is going to be a shared pool table. My dad thought, you are the craziest person ever. And I was like, yeah, but I really believe in the type of work they want to do. And it was just one of those things. And because I made that commitment, I knew that I had to apply. I had to be responsible for my actions, so I had to help them succeed. And that sort of, I was very fortunate I did that, and that informed what I thought was going to be great for years beyond.
Yeah, I think it is. It always does come back to the work, and the belief in the work will drive your career. And a creative director earlier on said to me, because I was struggling with whether I should go to a big agency or an independent, and he said, always make your move for the work, never follow the money. And and he's been right. And you know, I took a job as well that was a $10,000 pay cut. And when you're not making a lot of money, that's a lot of money. And but it was the right thing to do because I believed in what that agency was doing and the type of work they were doing. And you know, it propelled my career. But it is about following the work. And
money will always come to you if
Yeah.
you do the work. Always.
Exactly.
It catches up with you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I just feel like the same thing when I took the job. I was sleeping on my brother's couch for 6 months. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he was even more and more annoyed because that meant I wasn't going to move out. I couldn't afford to move out. But again, it's one of those things. And talking of the evolution, a big turning point for me was moving from being a very selfish creative to a selfless creative. Moving to a selfless creative is probably giving myself too many props, but moving from a very selfish creative when I realized that when I was given responsibility as a creative director or whatever it was, ECD, that I actually enjoyed helping other people's careers. I got as much fulfillment and excitement
Yeah.
seeing their ideas come up, and if I could nudge or help or get out of the way or clear the path, that was kind of an amazing thing. And a lot of creative leaders or leaders, they feel they have to smother.
Yeah.
You know, and it doesn't mean that if I believe that I can add impact directly and in a heavy-handed way, I will do that. But I don't need to do that for the sake of it.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes the best thing I can do is just get the hell out of the way
Let it happen.
and
Yeah.
let it happen. You know what I mean? And that was a great moment for me where I was like, I don't have to do everything.
Yeah.
I just have to.
I think that's, that was one of our next slides.
yeah.
I think that is one of the hardest transitions is being a creative and becoming a creative director or being the creative director and becoming the chief creative. That moving from me to we, you know, you work so hard at being great at your craft, at being a copywriter or an art director, and you're really good at it. And they go, oh, we're going to promote you, and you're not really going to do much of that anymore. You're going to do this other thing. And I think it really is, it's a really difficult head shift to start to champion other people and their work and carving out the you know, making that space for the work to live and talking to clients and convincing them that they need to do great work and that's how you're going to break through and that's how you're going to grow your sales. I think it is a really tough transition.
It is. It is.
And for you, I wanted to know because when you got promoted, I think you were like 15 or something, and you walk into the room and you're just like, hey, I'm your new boss. And everybody looks at you like, what the hell? Like, you know, how do you find your voice in those times, and how do you exert your newfound position?
Well, it's funny. I was very lucky that I was given opportunity, probably prematurely all the time in my sort of career. And my whole thing was knowing that I was fortunate and knowing that I was given these opportunities. It was always like, I have to live up to this. It wasn't like I earned this, so this is my right to be their boss. I was always like, you know, I believe I've got to live up to that. Mm-hmm. So even, and you know, in the beginning, I sort of liked being the youngest person. I liked being the young, you know, being the young guy that went into a room and the young boss and all that sort of stuff. But I also knew that they were assuming that I was going to fail or falter.
Right.
So I thought, okay, instead of me just using my title or position to force them into sort of, you know, a submissive type of, I was like, I have to earn their respect. And the only way to do that respect is show that you're sincere and show that you are about them and the work and the people and I love the fact that you look at leadership now, which is amazing across more and more so in our industry, leaders across multiple agencies and departments, they're not the stereotypical type of bosses.
Yeah.
Like to be a boss, people had to take on a persona that was artificial.
Yeah.
And now what I love is, you know, you don't have to be the loudest person in the room. You don't have to look like a certain thing. You can be yourself. And, you know, some of I can only speak for our agency, you know, most of the leaders in our office are not loud people.
Yeah.
Some of them are the most soft-spoken people with the most, you know, different backgrounds. You know, our CEO's from Maine is, you know, she's not a outspoken person. Our CCO's from Minnesota. She's like, you know, she's very straightforward and not sort of, you know, domineering. You know, some of our ECDs and stuff like that are, meek is the wrong word, but just quiet people. But they just command authority by their authenticity and their sincerity. And I've always thought that that was the thing. Like, there are much more articulate people than me. There are, much more sort of, backgrounds that suit them to be leaders than me. I'm just like, but if people feel believe that there's conviction in what I'm saying, and there's follow through in what I say, they'll support you.
Yeah, it's true. I had a client say to me once, he said, "You know what I like about you? I never feel like you're lying to me." And I said, "Thanks." That's a compliment, because I'm not selling him on something that I don't believe in. I'm going to be completely honest with him. And for me, it was hard finding what that voice is, because you see so many larger than life characters in terms of leadership, and really successful creatives. And I remember thinking, I'm not that person. I don't know what my shtick is. Like, what is it going to be? And trying to figure out what your brand is. And I realized it's not coming up with a brand, like, it's just being who you are, and just being more of that, and being confident about that.
Yeah, no one's a better you than you, right? I mean, even we talk about from a creative voice, as a young copywriter, I was so desperate to emulate copywriters that I admired, and I could never be as good as them or be the same as them. And then I was like, actually, I'm just going to, what is it how do I write? How do I think? How do I talk? And I'm just going to back myself and hope that works. And then,
Yeah.
I'm pretty good at being me.
Yeah.
Thank goodness.
Well, what makes you different? And it's funny, because when I look at your career, and I'm sure like most people in the audience, we go, holy shit, like, how did he do that? And so fast, and with, it seemed like a pretty straight rise, but there is something about how you approach the work, or how you think, or that makes you different from other creatives. And every creative here is different from the other person.
I think that's the thing, and same with you. I think we're all very different, right? You bring your background to the table when you make decisions, and when you're not sort of, as I said, you're not trying to be someone else other than you. Your background, from how you were educated, how you were raised, from your parents' careers,
right,
your social, like everything, and your values and all that sort of stuff. And I'm a very competitive, very restless person. I'm a very emotional person, so that's what I'm drawn. And
you don't seem emotional.
I don't. No. But I'm drawn to emotional things. That's the thing. That's the part of creativity I love. I love the empathy. I love the impact and all that sort of stuff. And I'm addicted to that. And it's not this. Success is about. I mean, success is wonderful, but it's what it allows you to do more so than what it is. And and maybe my competitive streak comes from being the fifth boy, where my whole upbringing was based on trying to stand out for my brothers.
Yeah.
Maybe my creativity came from the fact that everything that I ever had was inherited, hand-me-downs. So I had to take something that pre-existed and reinterpret it into something specifically for me, which is basically what our job is. We take mandatories and we inherit things, and we've got to make it more interesting.
You mean like jeans to jean shorts?
Everything.
Like that?
Jeans, rooms. I mean, no, not jean shorts. That's right. But I'm just interested in stuff, and maybe being an Australian, we like to simplify things down, and maybe I'm just lucky that in our industry, boiling things down to its simplest it works well. You know what I mean? And I feel like, and the last thing I'll say is I feel like my mother is she's a huge activist and a poet and an artist, and she was really, her whole fingerprints on all her children have been about like, what positive things are you doing for the world? And my father was a hardcore businessman, and he wanted us to be successful.
Right.
And I think I sort of moved, and I'm a bit of both. Probably more my mother, but I sort of understood that, there's value in both. I don't know. But from what makes me me, I don't know. Who knows?
I think it is.
My short legs.
I think the upbringing has a lot to do with it, and it is. I was a middle child, and being a middle child, a girl in a immigrant family, you really got to fight for your right to party. Like you're not getting anything.
Yeah.
And there's a really low expectation, and so it does shape how I see things, and the work ethic that my parents had, and just working harder really starts to shape how you approach problem solving and team building and all those things. And I think it's important to understand that about yourself and use it, because there's a power in how we were brought up, or even if it's negative, I think that there's something in that.
Do you see yourself as, for all your successes, do you see yourself as a role model? Do you feel any pressure from that?
I would say early on, I was, I went through a phase, and I think that we all go through this really selfish stage early on in our career, and I thought, I didn't get into this business to be a role model. Like, I don't want to be held to a standard that I can't live up to. And so I started to feel a lot of pressure about that. And, like I've heard people at work say to me, people really look at what you're doing every day. Like when you walk down the hallway and you don't say hello to people, they talk about that. And I go, I'm just going to the bathroom. Like sometimes I'm multitasking and I'm thinking about my next meeting, and they go, yeah, we understand that, but it's just, you should just know. And it really made me aware that it really does matter, and it is part of my job. And so now that I've grown up over the last couple of years, I recognize that it's important for me to be a role model and to be the best version of myself and to help other people. That's just part of the gig. Like you have to do that. And I remember Charles Barkley at the time when, somebody was criticizing him for not being a very good role model. And he's like, I'm just a basketball player. I didn't get into this to be a role model. And I thought, yeah, that's me. And now I've totally come around the other way. And I think it's also having a daughter, you go, yeah, I kind of need to be a better person. It's really important.
Thank goodness that more leaders are thinking like that now.
Yeah, I think that it is really important. And I think it's important for leaders to be more, verbal and more engaged in kind of mentoring. I know that growing up, there wasn't a lot of female leadership to look up to. There was Nancy and Janet and, a few others, but there weren't, you really need to have that support and see that and go, yeah, I can do that. And I think that that's really important.
Yeah. No, it's thankfully the industry is course correcting and also embracing, the change that needs to happen.
Yeah.
Not just for the sake of it, but because it also makes our industry so much better.
Oh, for sure.
You know what I mean? It's not just the right thing to do, it's also the right thing to do for the business, for the societal level, but also for the business.
Yeah. Well, there's, society is going that way. There's no stopping it.
No, I've got 4 kids, which is why I'm tired. But it's interesting to think of the sort of the world they're moving into, and the issues and barriers that people of our generation sort of face. That hopefully there'll be less of those for them, and less. It's kind of this.
Yeah.
Success based on merit.
Yeah.
And ethics more than anything else.
Yeah.
Maybe that's foolish of me to think it's going to be that simple, but
it should be that simple.
no, I want it to be, but I'm just saying, it's.
Yeah. So how do you hire? Like, what are you looking for when you hire these days?
That's a big question, actually. Well, I think, as I said, we were talking off stage, we're guilty of an industry which sort of plays into the last conversation is, we're guilty of hiring people that remind us of ourselves, which is why we all look the same.
I'm hiring all Asians right now. You're right.
I'm hiring all people from where I grew up, and there was only 2 families, so it's kind of stuff. No, but we are guilty of that, right? We hire people whose opinions remind, or think it's going to validate our own opinions, and sometimes it's just to actually physically look like us, or their backgrounds remind us, and that's why we ended up looking, this one-dimensional industry. But I'd like to think that I look for people that I don't need someone that that reminds me of someone or an opinion of someone I already have in the office.
Right. So you're very conscious of that.
I really try and think what's someone's unique point of view on something that's going to add a dimension to this office that we don't have.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I much prefer someone, as I said, going back to sincerity, and I much prefer someone that I can feel their personality oozing out of them, as opposed to just being so buttoned down. And and the quirky and the hardworking comes from anywhere, which is what I love.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the nerdy. I like the underdogs. I like the people who have something to prove that,
100%. 100%. Like, I think, going back to that entitled thing, I think anybody that assumes that they're a shoo-in or anything like
I
that.
hate the entitled.
No. It's a
I
t-shirt.
do.
No, but it's also, I do see myself as, someone who has an appreciation of all walks of life, and I just like interesting, generous people, and I'm desperate to spend time with people that I think are good human beings, without sound like a bumper sticker, and that comes across in the work. And I also want people, just if we bring it down to our industry, I don't want people that are obsessed with advertising. We're an industry that turns in on itself, and we can become so obsessed with ourselves and all that sort of stuff.
Then we make advertising that looks like advertising.
Yeah, and I'm like, you know what? Give me someone that's interested in, I don't want to say butterflies, that's random to say, or someone who's interested in, social change at this level, or someone who's, I don't know, I feel like because that's our responsibility, is to interpret what's going on in the world and bring it into the office and put it out there. And if everyone's got the same point of view, you're going to only have one point of view when you put it out to the world. Yeah. But we're all struggling with that. Like, how do we seem like an industry, and how do we make sure we stay in an industry that's attractive to people of all mindsets and all backgrounds? Yeah. How do we...
It's getting harder to attract those people. Yeah.
Definitely. But, going back to that thing, I say when we first started is, we've got to remind them that it's an incredibly amazing industry. Yeah. And we get to influence and touch and rub up against every other industry. Yeah. And that's pretty amazing.
Yeah. That's the best part of the job.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to say about, before we move on to the next section, is in terms of leadership, I think the big thing that switched for me and how I became a better leader was understanding that it's not just about your department. And I think that when you grow up in creative and you learn to fight for your work, and you have to fight, other departments, it was understanding that they're all your kids, and you need to mentor everyone. And once you understand that your influence needs to expand beyond the creative department, you become a better leader, and you become a leader in the agency. And people start to see you differently. And that was a big turning point for me in my career. And I think that helped propel me to get promoted, again to CEO, because when I first started, I was really insular about the creative department, and all the other departments or whatever, and just do it and shut up. And I think that there can tend to be that point of view from creatives, that arrogance. And I think that once you start to, you acknowledge that you need everyone. Like, selling work and getting to the work is so hard these days. You need everyone on side, and it really, really taught me to be a better person too.
I think those days are gone, long gone, where the creatives considered themselves the fighter pilots on the aircraft carrier, and everyone else was in service of that. Yeah. You know what I mean? I feel like, there isn't a successful creative who hasn't got there because some people across every department helped them get there and did things that made it easy for them or protected them. And that's the thing, people know in our office, we talk about being creatively led, but that is not an obsession and protection of just the creative department. That is of every department. And I'm really lucky that I have amazing departments where they're as vested in the output of what we do and the responsibility of what we do. And that makes a difference, and that makes there is a respect thing there. And that's not to say that there isn't disagreement about things. That's healthy and natural, but there's never different citizenship of it. And to be a successful entity, and what we're striving to do, no one's perfect, but is to make the company about the creative output and the impact, it's not just the creative department's responsibility. Even though there's a lot of day-to-day pressure on them, but it's not in isolation. And of course, when I started in the career, there was a bit of that we're the fighter pilots in other agencies and stuff. But it's hard enough as an industry if we're not all in it together type of thing. We're
Yeah.
kind of all screwed.
Yeah, oh, for sure. Which, optimism.
Optimism. That is actually such a key
Optimism
word.
wins,
That
yeah.
might be, when you said it's a blessing and a curse, I think that might be one thing about me, that is, when you said what's different. I think I'm almost, in a damaging way, too optimistic. Like, I honestly believe that things will go well. Not like fairy tale sort of stuff, but I'm like, I honestly think if we apply ourselves that good will win.
Right.
Even if that any brief, any client, the right energy and people on it, we will come up with something great.
Yeah.
And if we can't convince the client of that, then and they kill it, then we'll come up with something better. And as I said, it's torture for everyone in my office because sometimes they wish I wasn't so optimistic.
Right. Have you always been that way?
I think so. I think I just have a optimistic point of view. It doesn't mean, of course I get down the dumps and I'm pissed off at things, but I feel like, and maybe that's the advantage of being, this is not a plug for independence or anything like that, but I feel like being my agency, is that I feel like whatever problems or opportunities happen, the collective group of the people inside that office, we've got more chance of solving it.
Yeah.
Because if I don't believe that, then
Yeah.
I feel like we're just going to be worn down, because whoever compromises the least wins, right?
Right. Yeah, I think optimism is so important to be in the business. Like, you have to have that belief and that resiliency to move on. And, sometimes we are in a pitch or we're presenting the next day and we still have nothing. And I go, guys, we got like 24 hours. We've done whole pitches in that time. And I know that most of them want to kill me, but you have to have that point of view to just get through that next, just to clear your brain.
Otherwise,
and
we
keep
shouldn't
going.
do the industry, because like, if I always joke with the creatives, like, if I was let's say 50% of the work we present gets made, right? If you
50%,
I'm
that's
just saying,
pretty good.
hypothetically, it's okay. If I was a surgeon and 50% of my patients survived, I'd be like, I think I got to get
Yeah,
out of
that'd be
things.
bad.
You know what I mean? So we have to have that thing, right?
Yes.
And it's hard because it's a subjective industry. I was telling people the other day, I was saying it's a hard industry, right? I was equating it to Kickstarter. So on Kickstarter, you have a great idea, and your primary objective is to get as many people to say yes as possible, right?
Yep.
And if people don't like your idea, then it's fine. You just need to get as many yeses as possible. But in our industry, it's like Kickstarter, where you need to get these yeses, but if one person says no, it disappears. So imagine Kickstarter was like, you saw something you didn't like. I'm not going to not support it. I'm going to say no, and it disappears. Like, we have to only get yeses along the way.
Yeah,
One no can derail everything.
you're totally right.
So that's frustrating and exhausting and hard, and
Yeah.
we take it personally. But I wouldn't change it for anything else, though.
Yeah.
It's kind of
We're running out of time.
okay. Should we do some questions, because I feel like
Yeah, we missed tough clients and bad clients. And we also miss I wish I knew.
I wish I knew more good clients.
I wish I knew more good
No,
clients.
I think tough clients, I'm not afraid of tough clients. I actually quite like tough clients if there's a mutual respect and a mandate that's shared.
Yeah, they're all tough right now.
I think, some of our best work comes from our toughest clients,
Yeah.
but they're tough in expectation, not tough in there's no respect and they treat us badly and they misdirect us and they give us, I think tough is good.
Yeah.
You want people to challenge you and all that sort of stuff, but
It's the bad clients we have to stay away from. The ones that destroy your culture and
yeah, the ones that
tear
bullshit you.
people down.
The
Yeah.
ones that think they're helping you by giving you, telling you something's good to your face and then slowly picking it apart over the next 3 months. I'd rather someone say to me, this isn't right, this is why it's not right, da-da-da. That's,
Yeah.
you can deal with stuff. Like, we're an industry that needs, the less corners things are hidden behind, the more we can get to actually solving.
Yeah.
And that's what's, that's good. Should we get some questions? There's some sort of thing they have that they throw out. I should have said at the start, I'm a rambler. We're ramblers.
Yeah, we did ramble on. We missed a couple topics.
Hello?
You speak into the box?
Hello? Oh, there we go. It's working. So earlier you guys said something. You said, don't follow the money, follow the work. And I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I tweeted it and I was like, yeah. And then I was like, wait a second. I grew up without any money. I need money. I don't have sort of a fallback plan. But then I also started thinking, like, if great work is the engine that drives this industry, shouldn't the work and the money go together? Like, shouldn't we be wanting to do great work, but then also wanting to demand that we get paid the value?
Definitely.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not implying that you should be satisfied with just making good work and not get paid.
But it's interesting,
I agree.
there's this false dichotomy of like, oh, if you follow the money, it's bad. If you really care about doing good work, that's all that should matter. And I just wonder if we should challenge ourselves to expect both.
Well, we should always expect more, but if you take a job purely because of the salary and not because of the opportunity that it represents, then that's following the money, not the job. Clearly, I mean, I'm the biggest believer that everyone should earn as much as they possibly can based on their output. No question. I trust you. You know, when I was working for other
Totally
people,
agree.
when I negotiated, I was ruthless about negotiating what I thought was fair for me. But I was negotiating with someone I knew wanted me because of the work output. You know what I mean? I feel like it's, you know, you only get paid twice a month. You want to enjoy the days in between.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. We should get paid for what we do. It's just not following the money. There are certain agencies or companies that will pay way more, and we call it danger pay because, you know, they're not into the work or they just have other things that they care about. It's just my philosophy anyway, to follow the work.
As I said, I mean, yeah, that sounded maybe naive. I'm not pretending that money is not important. You know, I didn't grow up with money. You know what I mean? I'm very fortunate now, but what I'm saying is like, money came to me because of the work, and also I was in a position to demand what I thought was fair.
Yeah.
Because of
the
work I'd done. Any other?
Hi, my name is Misuk. Nice to meet you, Judy and David. Judy, I was very, very inspired by your background story that I read online. I have a question for you. When you hire people, you talked about hiring more Asian people these days. But I have this experience. When I started my career, somehow I got recruited by a recruiter for this really big agency that I dreamed of. But when I got there, I noticed that a lot of other new employees actually already knew their creative directors or art directors. Because later on, I learned that actually a lot of agencies in our industry, they like employee referrals. So a lot of them were hired by people who they knew. And it's a very standard policy that I've seen everywhere. And I think that that's actually what needs to be changed if we really want to open to hire very different people who are very different from us. And I'd like to hear from you, like what you are trying to really push in this area.
Yeah, that's a great question because it is, you know, hiring is it's really hard because, you know, we receive so many resumes and portfolios and, you know, you do get a lot of people from, you know, the employees you already have. They can vouch for someone or they know someone who is looking to move. And, you know, you tend to, like David said, you tend to look at people that you already know or people who know that person. It's a little bit like dating. You know, dating a total stranger is really hard. You like to know a little bit about that person, but at the same time, you know, we try to get out there and go to student portfolios and we try and have, you know, we try to do more things where we're meeting new people and through recruiters as well, so that we're not just keeping a really narrow focus on who we're hiring. But you know, the networking part is very much a reality of the business of, you know, you kind of hear about jobs before they even come out through other people. So you have to be on both sides of that. But it's, you know, it's a great question because how do you bring in more diversity that way and start to be exposed to people you don't know?
I think the thing, I mean, this is going to sound too glossing over. Whenever people have their chance to have a chance to meet people. I'm so taken by people who walk in the room and embrace who they are and their flaws and their backgrounds, and like they kind of put themselves out there, whether it be whoever, as opposed to try and mold themselves into someone that they're not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I feel like that if someone comes in a room and their background is something that's unfamiliar to me, like I'm fascinated by that.
Yeah, so am I.
I'm more curious. They don't have to suddenly try and pretend to be someone they're not. I feel like more so now than ever, what comes out of your mouth is more important than what it says on your CV, I think, for me anyway.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Last question, because we're getting flashed by the
flashy thing.
Hi.
technical term.
I just want to say I definitely resonate with the talk you guys are saying about being a role model, whether you choose to be or not, because you are, because everyone's looking to you in the leadership role. And I just was wondering if you could offer some advice, because we are humans, we're messy, we make mistakes. So what's your best advice for those moments when maybe you weren't the best role model? And how do you get that back and really learn through that and definitely, like, obviously in the authenticity of your mistakes, get back to that place of helping people continue to succeed and still be a role model?
The mic here isn't great, but I hope I'm answering your question. I think that, well, first of all, I screw up every day. Like every day I say something or do something and I think I might get fired for that, or please don't tweet that because I didn't mean it that way. So there are things that I do every day, but it's part of being who I am. But in terms of role model, it's, every day, the next day is an opportunity to be a better version of yourself. And it's actually on my, every year they do this, personal assessment. They go, what are your goals? And every year I put to be a better person. And it must throw off somebody in HR somewhere, but it's actually my goal is to be a better person than I was the year before and the day before. And I used to beat myself up, and I think, it's a lot of women do this, and a lot of people do this, where you just like replay conversations. You go, that was stupid, or I said something really dumb in that meeting. And then you just go, you know what, I'm gonna learn from that, and I'm gonna be a better person the next day. And yeah, I've said some things that I wish I hadn't, or behaved in certain ways, but I think it is just like the next day you just go, you know what, I'm gonna try and be better. It's the only way to go at it.
It's the right attitude.
And acknowledge that you screwed up.
Yeah. We have to go now, we're told, but thank you so much.
Yes, thank
very
you.
much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks. That was awesome.
This concludes the Creative Director track sponsored by Adobe.